When is a premium car no longer a premium car? The Mazda CX-60 was the first of the brand's premium pushing SUVs built on the large architecture platform. The rollout of the CX-60 hasn't been the smoothest, with Mazda updating the transmission calibration and the suspension tune a few times now. The latest move has seen the introduction of a new entry-level engine option. It's a familiar 2.5-litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder petrol. Stick with us as we find out whether Mazda has improved the appeal of this mid-size SUV or whether it's ruined the recipe. These new 2.5-litre CX-60 variants bring the entry asking price of this SUV to new lows. The CX-60 G25 Pure starts at $44,240 before on roads, which is $6,000 cheaper than the corresponding petrol inline-6 mild hybrid variant. This pricing is around the same as a mid-spec CX-5 G25 Touring, which is powered by the same 2.5-litre petrol engine. The standard equipment is largely the same with the addition of this new engine option. This means standard 18-inch alloy wheels, LED headlights, a 10.25-inch central multimedia system with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, plus dual-zone climate control across the lineup. The only feature G25 versions of the CX-60 miss out on compared with other engine options is a 150-watt AC power outlet on the rear center console. It's worth noting the GT and Azami trims aren't offered with the 2.5-litre petrol engine. For the full specification details, read my detailed written review at carsguide.com.au. One big consideration I have for CX-60 variants with this 2.5-litre engine is payload. Variants with this engine only have 425 kilos of payload, which is down considerably on all the other variants, despite them being heavier. This is major if you plan to carry at least 5 people on board and their stuff, because you could potentially be over the gross vehicle mass that's legally allowed for this car. Under the bonnet is where the biggest change has happened. The new 2.5-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine produces 138 kilowatts and 250 newton meters. This is down 71 kilowatts and 200 newton meters over the petrol inline 6 mild hybrid. Versions of this 4-cylinder also feature in a range of other Mazdas, including the forthcoming new generation CX-5. Like other large architecture Mazda models like the CX-70, 80 and 90, this CX-60 2.5-litre has an 8-speed multi-clutch automatic transmission. Drive is sent to the rear wheels only. All other versions of the CX-60 have all-wheel drive. Mazda claims CX-60 variants with this new 2.5-litre engine consume an average of 7.5 litres per 100 kilometres, according to ADR testing. This is 0.1 litres per 100 kilometres thirstier than the more powerful petrol inline 6 mild hybrid. During our testing, we saw an average of 8.4 litres per 100 kilometres, according to the trip computer. There's a 58-litre fuel tank which requires a minimum of 91 RON regular unleaded petrol. Alrighty, we're behind the wheel of the Mazda CX-60 2.5-litre, and first up I want to talk about the engine because that is the biggest difference with this car. It's a very familiar 2.5-litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, which doesn't have the largest power and torque outputs, but surprisingly it makes use of what it's got quite well. In everyday traffic, it doesn't feel like this car is stressed at all. It's surprisingly easy. Typically, it doesn't feel like this engine is working too hard at all in everyday circumstances. Obviously though, if you meet a higher hill or if you push the accelerator just that little bit harder, the engine does work that little bit more. I will say though, in previous applications or in other Mazda vehicles with this engine, this 4-cylinder does sometimes have a bit of a buzzy note, but in this particular car, there is almost a meaty quality to it that sounds quite nice. Something that has particularly taken me by surprise in this car is the rolling acceleration. For a car with not that much power and torque, you can get along and accelerate quite easily in this car, even when you're going 70, 80, 90, 100 kilometers an hour. That brings me on to my next point, which is the transmission. This car has the 8-speed multi-clutch transmission, just like other CX-60 cars and other vehicles based on the large architecture. That's a big point of difference from other vehicles with this 2.5-litre engine because they have a 6-speed automatic that's a regular torque converter unit. While there are more gear ratios to choose from which keep the revs lower for longer, it's still not exactly perfect. At low speeds when you're first taking off, the transmission can clunk and change and be a little bit jerky between first and second gear. And then also something that I've noticed is if you're accelerating and you go up a steep hill, the transmission can hold a high gear, which allows the car to almost bog, and then all of a sudden it'll kick down the gears and rev quite hard. Another big point of difference with this particular CX-60 is its rear-wheel drive. You can't get this 2.5 litre engine with all-wheel drive like all of the other CX-60 trims. From behind the wheel, it doesn't necessarily feel that much different from other CX-60s because there's not a lot of power to play around with, but in a way, going for rear-wheel drive only means you're saving weight. Next up, I want to talk about the suspension and the ride in this car. It features the updated suspension tune that features on all of the other 2025 CX-60 trims, and I think I've got to say this particular CX-60 is the best ride I've experienced yet in a CX-60. It balances comfort and sportiness in a nice way. Typically with a CX-60, it has always been a little bit too firm, but this car rounds off the bumps a little bit nicer than I've experienced previously. When you hit a speed bump, it does still feel quite substantial in the car, but it doesn't necessarily shunt like it once did. Instead, it soaks up the bump and you just make one movement. Overall, as a dynamic package, I'm honestly quite surprised by this car. I expected to be disappointed in the engine, given it does power a lot of other entry-level Mazdas, but it honestly quite feels at home in this larger and more premium CX-60. This engine honestly makes it feel like the inline-six petrol and diesel are a little bit overkill, and unless you really want the plug-in hybrid and fuel-saving benefits that brings, this 2.5 litre four-cylinder might be the pick of the lineup, especially if you're looking at it from a value perspective. Mazda has been working really hard through a number of tweaks, changes and additions with the CX-60, and it finally feels like it's starting to show. This new 2.5 litre engine is far from a performance powerhouse. Despite that, that's not really what this car is about. It's more for the everyday person who isn't a car person. Despite its mediocre outputs, it certainly makes the most of what it's got. However, it's still not a perfect package. The gearbox can be a little bit finicky and the ride sometimes still errs just a touch too much on the firm side. However, the value proposition has never been higher. Thank you for watching. For more and to read my detailed written review, head to carsguide.com.au.